Our modern world is filled with doom and gloom, and endless and seemingly petty conflicts. One of the biggest conflicts is the culture war. A war that some on one side say doesn't exist, and has been manufactured by the other side to create a conflict. Either way, there's still conflict. One side is constantly fighting for equality and against injustice, and quite often, these issues of equality and injustice are disputed by the other side. We see more and more ridiculous claims of bigotry, so much so that those shouting about it seem to be more in line with conspiracy heads who see the triangles everywhere than they do with Martin Luther King. We also see more and more demands for equality when almost every imaginable barrier in the Western and developed world has been torn down. And quite often, these barriers are made up using a slanted, biased view of data. Then we get people just plain making stuff up, like Jussie Smollett, who notoriously tried to convince everyone he was the victim of a hate crime, and thus told us he was the gay Tupac. Tupac had struggle because he was brought up in it, and because he was brought up by Afeni Shakur, a legendary Black Panther. He was always seeking to right wrongs or attracting enough trouble that he had to constantly struggle. That's why he made the music he made, and that is why it stands the test of time. Opinions can be added later. This is why some of your favorite artists eventually stop making good music, because the struggle is gone. Hungry rappers living in poverty need to get out of the struggle, and in turn produce their best work. But years later, and the struggle is a distant memory, they end up making turd. This happens to many artists. You might get lucky, like Tupac, and have something bad happen that reignites the struggle, and have a glorious second wind. You don't have to go to jail or get shot like Tupac. You can just have a bad breakup. Look at Future. Once he had become a #1 artist, he drifted into mediocrity, but then he met Sierra. Once that hoe had broken his heart, Future came back with a beast run of the best music he had ever made, with Monster, Beast Mode, Dirty Sprite 2. We want great artists to experience adversity, because it brings out the best in them. Jussie Smollett did not experience the adversity that Tupac did. Tupac had struggle. But then again, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, well, they had way more struggle than Tupac ever did. And that made those men great and gave the world so much value. Each generation gets it easier in the modern world. And that's the beauty of progress. Things aren't perfect, but for a hell of a lot of us, things are really, really sweet. Many of us have more wealth than the mightiest of kings from back in the day. Your average poor person is richer than a 17th century country gent. And yet, we are more unhappy. We have spiraling rates of depression and anxiety, and these get more prevalent the younger the people are. If this doesn't slow down, your unborn children are going to be basket cases in need of a Xanax drip as soon as they exit the womb. So how come we've come so far and made so much progress and obliterated so many of the world's injustices, barriers, and wealth thresholds, and yet feel so angry and miserable? Because the universe is a fine balance of light and dark, and without balance everything turns to shit. Progress is the gift and the curse. Do you remember Jurassic Park? No, not that one. That one.
Life, finds a way.
We have eradicated so many external struggles that nature, the universe, has had to step in and make sure we maintain balance in a different way. And this has given us an epidemic of the internal struggle. We need struggle. Without it, we're doomed to fail. Our nature is based on the everyday struggle. We had to find food. We had to find wood to make us warm and cook the food. We had to brave the natural elements. Up until the Industrial Revolution, we had to have 17 kids because life was a numbers game. About 12 of those kids would die, which left us with enough kids to push the plows for the farm, so we wouldn't all starve to death. Now if you have 17 kids, the local council will buy you a house and the Daily Mail will write a hit piece on you. Someone who is born in the age of winning the birth lottery doesn't have that much to worry about, and thus becomes weaker because the need for struggle is unfulfilled. Back in the 80s, kids had to worry about way more than the kids do now. And kids in the 1940s had to worry about having a bomb dropped on their head. Now, kids don't really have anything to worry about. So instead, they need to invent it. You're a white middle-class kid from a very safe area of the country. You have a pair of shoes that fits every mood. You have a phone that costs more than a month's rent in a very swanky neighborhood in Hanoi. Your haircut costs more than a month's wages in the Central African Republic. And it looks shit. So what can you complain about? Well, your pronoun, I suppose. If you're not part of an oppressed group, and there are less and less of those in the West by the minute, then you have to invent one, or join one invented by someone else who has too much going for them. Suddenly, you're a new entity, a gender that didn't exist before. This gender isn't recognized by other people. And just like how the Turkish refused to recognize the state of Kurdistan, this is an outrage. You exist and your voice needs to be heard. Every day you fight and fight to be recognized. And more corporations get scared because they were being unknowingly bigoted towards people who didn't exist last Thursday. This is the problem. This is the root of the depression and the anxiety. I'm not excluding myself from this equation, and I'm not excluding some of you who don't join online hate mobs that attack people who dare to deny someone's imagined struggle. We're all doing it one way or another. I've had it good. I've had it blessed. I came from a 2-parent household and was showered with more love and support than you could ever wish for. It wasn't perfect, and there were some issues, but compared to most of the world, I was a prince. But I have suffered from anxiety and obsessive disorders, which has led to depressive states and the need to self-medicate and escape with drugs, alcohol, and the pursuit of pum-pum. I needed struggle, real struggle, so I created it. I am not alone. Modern life is boring, and it's boring because it's easy. Even the poorest people in the West have more dispensable income than anyone ever had in history. Every single one of our needs can be met, and quite often without even leaving the house. In fact, without leaving bed. You can work, shop, and date from the comfort of your bed. Soon enough, food deliveries will be so advanced you won't even need to walk to the front door. A drone will unlock your window and fly your Happy Meal into your bed, and your personal robot will fucking feed the slop to you. I expect you'll be able to poop in your bed without any issues soon enough. Because we have it so good, we are so bored. And so bored because we have nothing meaningful to do. There's nothing that we really have to do. So we fill up that time with meaningless things. And some of us find this very difficult. Our brains need better stimulation, and that's generated by the friction of struggle. So what do? We get fucked up. When you spend your time pursuing pleasure, you suddenly have something to do. Drugs, for example, offers a whole new experience of fulfillment. If you don't have money, now you need to get the money. Because you need drugs. When you have the money, you need to go get the drugs. And depending on where you live, who you know, and the type of drugs you want, this offers a whole world of adventure. The payoff for the adventure is releasing yourself from the reality of not having anything to do. When you have this need to do something meaningful, you can pursue positive things, such as those who love exercise, extreme sports, or those whose work life, such as surgeons and soldiers, fulfill that need. But for many of us, we're reduced to the endless pursuit of escaping. Addictions also offer a new struggle and sense of purpose. Getting clean. Gambling, cocaine, heroin, sex, alcohol. All of these addictions are very difficult to quit. When you go on the path to recovery, you experience a sense of purpose and meaning. You gotta get clean. This is such a struggle that it fulfills our lives and gives us meaning. Being a recovering addict technically gives your life more purpose than fighting for a cause that doesn't really exist. When you have no bigotry to destroy, you must invent it and therefore have purpose. But because you invented it, there is no actual end goal. It just serves as something to do, like smoking crack. At least a crack addict has an end goal that is obtainable. Obviously, the answer isn't to get addicted to drugs and beat addiction. Do I even have an answer? Wait around and see. Life without struggle is the root cause of many issues, and that's because of the hard wiring in our brains. We cannot undo that. We must service it. We have generations dealing with record-breaking levels of anxiety and panic disorders. Though things like diet and social media are affecting this heavily, it's not the root cause. The root cause is our nature. And nature always finds a way. Life was a struggle for the majority of us for thousands of years and only started to change a very short time ago. We had to fight to live. Our whole nervous system evolved from the fight for survival. Your body is made up of a complicated network of nerves and nervous systems. Over the millenniums, it has adapted to the environment to ensure our survival. And when you need its help, it's quite remarkable. Your central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, is made up of smaller nervous systems that regulate various bodily functions. One of these subsystems is the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for what we call fight or flight response. This term is often used when discussing anxiety and panic attacks. It's called a broken fight or flight response. This is somewhat untrue. The response isn't broken, we've just outgrown it too fast for it to adapt. Fight or flight is when your sympathetic nervous system boosts your energy in response to negative emotions, such as fear and anger. This enables us to gather the strength needed to either run from danger or fight it. This is because way back when we had really big problems to deal with. We had to run from killer beasts, such as saber-toothed tigers. And if that didn't work, we'd have the energy to turn around and fight them. For a very long time, we had a need for this response. Even after the big bad animals had gone, we had a lot more work to do to stay alive. Our energy was channeled correctly. Now we don't need it. It gets triggered by less and less serious threats. So much so that the mere thought of someone saying the wrong pronoun is enough to trigger its response. We're broken. And as much as that may make you snigger, it's not really a diss. We all experience it to some degree. I used to find shopping in a supermarket an overwhelming experience that would trigger my fight or flight response. I'd waltz in without any idea about what I'd be cooking for the entire week and be confronted with rows and rows of choice and abundance. It was all too much. I couldn't make any decisions. My mind was just in chaos. I'd panic, and sometimes I felt like screaming and running away. That sounds ridiculous, but it's actually true. We're all a little broken like that. Some people find making a phone call or saying goodbye to more than one person an overwhelming and traumatic experience. And unless you've experienced that, you have no idea how real fear is and how much it consumes you. We invent struggle all the time. Our body craves it. The generation before the first generation of privilege, aka the boomers, was arguably the last one to experience great struggle. It's been a cakewalk ever since then. They fought a war. A real war, one of the bloodiest and costliest of all time, and those that didn't fight felt the struggle hard, one way or another. Throughout history, we had to defend and attack because of invading tribes, nations, and whoever else. We also had to fight the elements, and fight more disease, and fight the power because most of us lived really harsh lives. The power and the wealth gap was astronomical, more than we could ever comprehend nowadays. We always need to fight. Those of you from more stable environments look down upon street gangs and football firms. You think how ridiculous it is to stab someone from a different postcode or headbutt some guy wearing a different football scarf. But this is the struggle. This is the purpose. This is what they believe in. Some of you shout at the TV because some 7-year-old can't pronounce a Rwandan politician's name and demand they get set on fire outside the Tower of London. That's your struggle. It's also meaningless. The difference is a kid on the block stabs a kid from another block because he knows it's kill or be killed. It's a ridiculous way to live, but the struggle is a real one, and one that actually matters more than changing the name of a neighborhood because the past exists. We don't want kids in gangs having to struggle like that, but it sure makes their existence more meaningful than a lot of ours. Another problem with this age that lacks struggle is that it needlessly drives us apart. During hard times, particularly World War II, we were all in it together.
I pray that you all put your shoes way under the bed at night, so that you got to get on your knees in the morning. And while you're down there, thank God for grace and mercy and understanding. We all fall short of the glory. We all got plenty. If you just start thinking of all the things you got to say thank you for, that's a day.
Come on.
That's easily a day.
If you want to escape the endless meaninglessness of not having a real struggle, you have to create it. But you have to create good struggle. And that means being careful with what you choose. Introduce real struggle. Find purpose. Seeking short spikes of happiness through narcotics, alcohol, sex, masturbation, and meaningless social media engagement, and so on, only produces short-lived moments of joy and achieves nothing. In order to meet the needs that your true nature yearns for, you need to pursue the long game. The long game involves steady releases of dopamine through working on something bigger that will take a long time and will require learning skills. Learning new skills and practicing them provides your true nature with what it needs. The more you practice, the more obstacles you will face, and facing and overcoming those obstacles will satisfy your true nature. You will create struggle that means something, and working towards an end goal that offers value to the world means you have purpose, because it's productivity that drives our society and gives our economy long-term health. You live in the now and relish the challenges you face every day. But what can you do? How can you do it? The internet is full of resources that can help you find your true purpose and unlock your potential. It's not easy, but it's not as difficult as you think. That's just your ego trying to hold you back, and the fact that it's not so easy is perfect. You already have some valuable struggle in your life. Good for you. You may have a negative association with the internet, because for you, it may symbolize laziness and distraction. If that's the case, that's your fault, and your next struggle is to overcome it. The internet is a wonderful resource full of infinite possibilities that can enrich your life. It's as close to utopia as you can get right now. The biggest problem is that you have free access to the internet utopia, and when you enter it, you choose to hang out by the bins and sniff in everyone's putrid waste. Stop that. Another thing you can do is introduce more struggle into your life that removes you from the distraction of nonsense that fuels your meaningless internal struggle. Go create external struggle, just like Denzel's suggested. Hide your shoes, brush your teeth with your other hand, cook your food from scratch. Oh, but I can't cook. Then fucking learn. It'll be a struggle. Don't save your passwords with autofill. Memorize them. Write them down and hide them. Join a gym and never bring your membership card and fight for your right to get into it. Have some children. There's an almighty struggle that'll be well worth it. Try meditation. Trust me, if you've never done it before, it'll be a beautiful struggle. Trying to ignore your brain constantly yapping at you to go and whack off or play Candy Crush. But seriously, give yourself external struggle and reject convenience. And for those of you who need to fight for a proper cause, there's plenty of them. You just gotta go to where they are. You need to stop fighting for causes that are already won and stop making them up or joining activist fantasy groups. Ripping down statues of some guy who's been dead for hundreds of years doesn't do anything for the fight against slavery, because we don't have slavery. You know what we do have? Forced labor and underpaid illegal workers. Go find them and liberate them.
But how will I find them?
There's a struggle for you.
How will I liberate them?
Work it out. Another worthy struggle. There's also misery and pain and external horror all over the world you can help with. Quit your shitty job that offers nothing to the world and go out there and do good. Go build a school somewhere that's dirt poor. Go try and end the slave trade in Libya. Go to one of those countries that persecute homosexuals and fight. Go to China and demand the Uyghurs get set free. Go and adopt a war baby. There is literally so much going on in the world that needs attention. There is little excuse for you not to find a real cause and fight for it. You need to do it. You will not believe the amount of pleasure and satisfaction it will give you. You will be so overwhelmed by the gratitude you receive, you'll elevate your spirit to the highest plane imaginable and become God's right-hand human. Go forth and find some struggle. Make the world a better place by becoming a better person. We all need struggle.